I am blue, you are bright and shiny in my mind. You got me loving, hating, crazy indecision in my mind.
Welcome to the Fall Podcast, where the focus is on deer hunting, tips, tricks, tactics, and stories from across the Midwest. And now, here is your host, Aaron Blasey.
Welcome to the Fall Podcast. I am your host, Aaron Blasey, and this is episode number 72. And I am by myself today. I'm flying solo. Justin is not with me on this one. And I thought it'd be a good opportunity to get a hold of Rob Schneider from Rattler Grips down in Texas. So I don't know if you guys have heard of Rattler Grips. What he does is he makes custom bow grips for basically any bow out there. You can get them engraved, you can get them with different logos on them. I mean, basically whatever you want to do, he can do it. And he can do it in any type of antler, basically, or composite stuff, you know, like molds, anything like that, basically for just about any bow. I don't know if he does stuff with the older bows like back, you know, in the 90s and stuff like that, but I'm sure he probably can. So it's pretty cool. I do actually have one of his grips from back in 2014. I had he made up a grip for me. It was pretty cool. I had my name engraved on it, and it was really cool. It was custom made to me, so, and it was made out of whitetail antlers, so that was pretty cool too. But not only do we talk about Rattler Grips, we talk about hunting whitetails in Mexico. Now, he's been doing this the last couple years, and this was pretty cool. It's a shorter podcast, but we dive into how he hunts and how a lot of the people down there in Mexico hunt whitetails. So it's pretty cool, and you know, it is different than what we do here in the Midwest and in the States, but it's cool to be able to see what he does and kind of put a spin on it for what we do, like finding pinches and funnels. Like what he does is kind of the same thing, but you just got to think a little more outside the box with it. So it's really cool to see that side of it. So I thought that was unique as well. Yeah, it's a pretty cool podcast. Like I said, it's a shorter one, but it's really cool. It's a good listen. So on the whitetail side of things, for me, I've got all my stands hung. Everything's ready to go. I mean, if deer season was open tomorrow, I could go hunt. So I got all that done this last week, and like I said, I like to get in and be out of the woods by August 1st with nothing else to do. So I do have a couple more things to do, and I'm going to get those done this weekend, and that's put out my box blinds. The wheat is finally off the field, so I can drive back there, put the box blinds in the waterways and the fence rows, and don't have to ruin any crops or anything like that. But after that is done this weekend, it is no more on the farm. Batteries and cameras are all good to go. They're going to last the rest of the summer, and I'm just going to glass from a distance. So that is my game plan. But for me, that's kind of where I'm at. Last thing is I'm just trying to get my bow dialed in. I finally got my Garmin sight, so that is top priority as well, as try to get those done. I'm building some arrows actually as we speak. I just took a break from that, building arrows. I'm shooting, like I said last podcast, I'm shooting the Easton Axis 340s this year, 5mm. I ended up going with 75 grains of brass on the front end to get my FOC up, and my FOC is up around 12, so that's pretty good. That's kind of where I wanted to be. So yeah, I'm excited. It's about a 470 grain arrow, so I'm excited about that. I got my setups coming along. Now it's just got to get the bow dialed in the rest of the way with the Garmin, and we'll be all ready to go for the fall. So I guess with that being said, I'm going to stop rambling and boring you guys, and I'm going to jump over to that interview that I did with Rob. All right, on the phone with me today, I have Rob Schneider from Rattler Grips. Rob, how's it going, man?
Doing good.
Good deal. So you're hailing from Texas right now, correct?
That's correct. The Republic of Texas.
There you go. How's the weather down there right now? Pretty hot?
It has been, but we had a little front push through, and actually yesterday morning it was 57 degrees where I'm currently at, and it felt like a October morning. Really had the juices flowing, wanting to go hunt.
Got that itch. Yeah. Up here in the north, in Michigan, the last 4 days, the humidity is really turned off, and at night it gets down, low 70s, maybe into high 60s, and it gives you that October feel because you get off of the humidity so much, and it's like, it goes from 100 degrees to 70. It feels like it should be October. So
Yeah.
it gives you the itch for sure, man.
Yeah, right now I'm at a friend's house just north of San Antonio, and it's drier air here compared to where I live on the coast throughout Houston because we got the humidity.
Yep.
I mean, you walk outside and you'll just drown because of the humidity. It's unbearable at times.
For sure. Well, before we get too far, can you introduce yourself, after I just did it, but kind of, tell me, how Rattler Grips got started, where Rattler Grips is at, and a little bit about yourself?
All right. Well, born and raised in Texas, grew up hunting in Texas since I was 5, and started bow hunting when I was 11, killed my first deer when I was 12, and with a bow, and never really looked back after that. I didn't hardly touch a gun much more after shooting that first one with the bow, as
Yep.
do most bow hunters. I get the same feeling, I'm sure. And, then to start Rattler Grips, I'd made some for myself. My friend asked for me to make him some, and I said, man, you make custom pull cues, you can do this. And he goes, I don't have the time. And that was the internet forum days. And my handle on an internet forum, I went by Rattler because I used to play with rattlesnakes growing up. And I sat there and he's like, please just make me some. So I made him some. Well, then he puts them up on the internet forum. He said, Rattler made them for me. So that's kind of how Rattler Grips got started.
Okay.
And it was more of a hobby than anything. And then with the job I had at the time was a union job, and there was a possibility of a strike every 3 years. And they always say, man, you need to have some money set aside in case the strike comes, this and that, blah, blah, blah. And so I started doing it more and more, and I was just putting the money aside. And lo and behold, one year we did have a strike, and that's how I survived, was off of that grip money.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
So, but yeah, that's kind of how it started, and it took off, and more so than I ever expected.
Well, I ordered a grip from you. Oh gosh, what year was that? 2014 maybe. And I had at the time, I obviously don't shoot that bow anymore, but I had it made out of deer antler. And I'll tell you what, it was the coolest grip. Everybody was asking me like, "Where'd you get that done?" And how'd you do that and stuff? Because I had you do my signature on it, and then our deer camp here in Michigan, I had that logo. So they turned out really good, and I'm actually looking at your website right now, and I love your antler ones. Your antler grips are really sweet.
That is by far the most popular grip, and it's my most expensive one just because, number one, the cost of the antler, and number two, the wear and tear on saw blades and sanders.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So that's why I have to price it the way I do. But I would have never thought antler would have been as popular as it is, and I probably do. It's almost to the point where I do more antler than I do any other materials.
No kidding.
And so much so that this year I actually drove 13 hours to New Mexico and bought sheds this spring just so I could have antler stock.
Yep. So are you doing, like, what types of antlers? Are you doing whitetail, elk, like all sorts of things, or do you just gravitate towards one?
I like elk. Elk is probably the best medium. Axis, if you can find Axis antler, they're good too, but those people don't realize, but Axis hardly has any marrow in the middle. It is like a solid core. Really? And yes, it's so hard. I mean, it will eat up sanders like you wouldn't believe. But it's a hardy antler at the same time. But I try to mostly stick with elk. I have done some out of moose. I've done some out of whitetail. But whitetail, I have to have a thicker piece. I like to have a thicker piece because it gives me more working room. Yep.
Well, and I would think too on elk antlers, you could probably get more grips out of one side of an antler.
Oh yeah. Just because of the sheer size of it.
Yeah,
yes.
Right. And the mass that they have that carries out throughout their tines and all that stuff. So that's cool.
Exactly.
I would have never guessed that about where you're talking about axis and the bone marrow. And, that's crazy. I would have never guessed that.
Yep.
So how long have you been doing the Rattler grip thing then?
I actually kind of started my stuff in August of 2008, and it really, really, I guess, caught on in 2009 somewhat. And I would say 2011 or 12, right in there, it really took off.
Okay.
It really just, it's just like it got a boost of adrenaline per se, and it has increased every year.
That's
it
cool.
used to be where I only had a busy time at the beginning of the year when everybody was getting the new bows, and then it's gotten to where I'll be busy, or like last year, say I was busy all the way up until like mid-May, and then mid-May through the end of July really wasn't that busy. And then this year, I've had 2 weeks that really wasn't busy in June. Otherwise, it's been pretty busy throughout.
That's cool.
So I'm not, as my wife says, it's like a bicycle. You want a bicycle, you got to pedal it.
Yep.
She goes, don't be complaining about the ride.
For sure. Well, now you offer a lot of different types of grips as well, too, right? I mean, you've got like exotic woods and what's the other? Is that like a composite, or what is that other stuff made out of, like your swirls and stuff?
The swirls there's several types of swirl material, and I usually buy all of that stuff from vendors that get it from overseas.
Okay. Because
just due to EPA regulations here in the States, they cannot make those same type of products here.
Gotcha.
But they can once they're hardened, once that acrylic is hardened, it passes FDA, laws and all that, and they can have it shipped over.
Okay.
So it's just the making process, I guess, is not good for the atmosphere here per regulations or whatever.
Yep.
There's one acrylic that we can make, and that is widely used, and you see it when I make my wood, what I call wood fusion. Is where I have stabilized wood mixed with a resin, and that stuff is what do they call it? Aluminite or something like that. Aluminite. Yep. And that stuff does pretty good, but you've got to have the right equipment to get it to set. You got to know your setting times and all that, and it has to be done, say in a pressure pot. You got to push all the air out of it. You got to have molds. So it's kind of an expensive process to get set up, but once you get it set up, it's always there.
For sure. Now, how long does it normally take you from start of an antler one, let's say, to get it cut, grinded down, sanded, holes made in it for, the bow handle, and then, like, how long does that whole process take?
On an antler, depending on the model of a bow, just different sizes take different amounts of time. But
yep.
My number one seller in grips is probably Hoyt bows.
Okay.
Right now, and not far behind it is Matthews, especially with the new Engage grip. But for instance, to do a Hoyt set of Hoyt grips from start to finish with antler, I've got it down, my process down to where I can do it in about 30 to 35 minutes.
Oh, wow. That's pretty quick.
And compared to when I first started doing it, it was taking me over an hour to do a set.
Okay. I got you.
So I've gotten the process down, pretty good to where, and it's just been experimentation, buying different types of sanders, different types of saws, and finally I've got it worked out to where what I think is a good formula, and I can push them out quick.
That's sweet, man. And I see you do make like bow limb graphics as well. Is that true?
No, I don't do the limb graphics.
Oh, okay.
But I can do emblem pieces on bows.
Emblem pieces, yep. Okay, like what's on a riser or something?
Yeah, I can do those. And this year I bought my own laser engraver, so I can put in, I can do my own laser engraving now.
Nice.
So
that's sweet, man. When you and I were talking through social media and text and stuff like that, you brought up that you're going to be hunting, some Mexico whitetails this upcoming year, and that intrigued me. So, I mean, I want to segue into talking about the Mexico whitetails and how the hunting is down there, and what made you want to go down there and do it.
Okay, well, what made me want to go down there is my wife is from Mexico.
Okay.
And everybody, or people in the industry that have met her, they know her as Mamacita. So that's
Okay.
that's how I introduced her.
All right.
And but anyway, no, she's from down there, and her uncle owns a ranch kind of in between. It's not too far outside of Monterey, but it's at the base of a mountain.
Oh, really? Okay.
And through translation, I asked him, "Does anybody hunt it?" And he goes, "Oh no, nobody hunts it. Nobody's ever hunted out here that I know of." And he goes, "I think about 6 ranches down the road." He goes, "I think they do some hunting because I hear gunshots way off in the distance during hunting season." And I said, "Well, can I hunt it?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, not a problem, not a problem." I said, "You know, how do you go about getting tags?" And he's like, "Well, I don't know." Well, it just so happens that one of my wife's childhood friends, her husband is a hunter, and told me the process of how to get tags. And there's various ways. A lot of ranches get issued tags, kind of like a ranch, say in New Mexico, get so many elk tags or whatever, and then they can turn around and sell them.
Yeah.
And that's the same. It's kind of the same concept down there. And you just have to find the people that want to sell you the tags. Now, most tags sell anywhere from $100 US to $150 US down there.
Oh, that's not bad then.
It's not bad, but I have actually found a guy in that town that will sell them to me for $60.
Oh.
So
now what's the game laws like? How many animals or how many whitetails can you take? Is there a certain amount?
However many tags you have.
Oh, okay.
So you can shoot an unlimited amount if you want.
You just got to buy all the
And
tags.
as long as you had the tags.
Gotcha.
But like where I'm at, the area was not known for having big whitetails. I knew that going into it. I just thought it'd be fun hunting at 2,000 feet of elevation, and it feels like I'm hunting out west because of the mountain right there and everything else. But it's just straight up hunting whitetail. And I sat there and it just like Texas, a lot of people hunt over feeders. Well, you can bait down there, so I set up a feeder and started baiting. And the first time I went and sat was January 2nd of 2018, and it was 28 degrees that morning there.
Wow.
Or it was actually that afternoon. It was 28 degrees, and it was the first time they'd seen snow in the area, and I can't remember how many years they were saying.
Deer were probably running like crazy.
Well, the thing is the first time I checked my camera, I only had does on it. I could tell there was 2 or 3 fawns and like 2 does. I didn't have many deer, and I just said, well, it's going to be fun just to go out. I haven't, because I actually set up that feeder the opening day of season, and I hadn't touched it in a month. Well, I sit there, and the feeder had gone off, and I see I'm sitting in a pop-up ground blind, and I see antlers, and I said, oh, that buck doesn't look like it's that big. He looks like he could possibly be a grower. And then the buck walked out, and I saw the body size on him. I said, this deer's got to be 6.5 years old.
Wow.
It's had a huge body on him, and real wary. He did not want to come into that feeder. He walked around. He sniffed. Acting like a true mature deer. And he stopped broadside and at 18 yards and gave me a shot opportunity, and I shot him and got him. And when I checked my camera, he was the only buck I had on camera out of 6 different deer.
Wow.
Well, then here comes this last year, and I guess I'm bringing in deer from other ranches because nobody hunts around there.
Mm-hmm.
I end up getting 30 different deer on camera and 15 different bucks.
Wow. It's just crazy how putting a feeder there like that just can attract.
And just feeding.
Yeah.
And just feeding them. Yeah, it's amazing just seeing it bring in. And like I had a buck I hunted last year. I hunted for him a couple of times till I rolled my ankle really well. But I only had night pictures of him on camera, and he's 13 points. He's not real wide, but his beams are probably 28 inches long. They go out past his nose, and they drop down like drop tines.
That's awesome.
And he has kickers off of each G2. He has a sticker coming off the base. He's probably a mid-150s deer, but for an area that's not known for having big deer, it was a testament to what age will do. If you let them get up in age, they will get big.
For sure. So, if you had to guess, how many locals around there are hunting like that for whitetails?
So, in that area, I don't think there's a lot, but the town my wife is from, you would be amazed how many people hunt.
So, are they hunting with bows, guns, or does it matter?
I'm seeing a good mix of it, but to own a gun there's a lot of paperwork that's involved and strict laws with guns. So I don't even cross with a gun. I just bring a bow. And the only thing about bringing a bow across is have your points, even field points, unscrewed from arrows.
Really?
Yeah, because they will confiscate it otherwise. They consider that like a loaded gun.
Okay. I can see that.
So that's the only law I've heard of to do, and I've done it, and I've never been questioned. I've been stopped at the border to have vehicle inspection. They see the bow. They don't ever ask any questions about it. So
now, are there any laws taking, meat and animals back into Texas from, Mexico going across the border?
Well, I've heard mixed on it now. So I had my buck. I had him skull mounted at the local taxidermist.
Okay.
And I gave the meat from that buck to my wife's uncle for letting me hunt.
Yep.
And everything. But my buddy that goes into Sonora all the time, hunting coos deer, he says you gotta have somebody pick all the ticks off the cape, and you gotta have it frozen.
Really?
To bring it back. Now, whether or not that's true with coming in through Texas, I don't know. I have no idea on that. Because when I brought my buck back across, I just had to have the tag on the antlers, and it was just a skull. It was a skull mount.
Yep. Okay. I got you. So is there any trees down there, I guess you could say, to put like a stand in, or is it all ground blind?
If you have creeks running through your place, the low areas, you'll see a lot of pecan trees in those and some scrub oak.
Yeah.
Most of the time it's just low brush, kind of like South Texas is.
Yep.
You get up into the mountainous areas, you get the cedars and stuff like that. The mountainous area looks, if anybody's been to New Mexico, it looks very similar to New Mexico, except I think it's just a little bit warmer because it's further south.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, so tree stand hunting is basically out of the question. Now, you're hunting them out of a ground blind. Do you ever put any tripod stands up or anything, or is that an option?
Man, if you had where I'm at, if you had a short tripod, I mean, I looked at it. That's one of the first things I said, I wonder if I could do a tripod because that'd be easy to move in.
Yep.
And I said, no. I'm going to have to do nothing but ground blinds.
Yep.
So, and I leave my ground blinds set up year round.
Okay.
Just so they're used to seeing it.
Yep.
Because I leave a window open, leave that black hole, so they're just used to seeing everything.
So, up here in the Midwest, and especially like Texas and, in the U.S., you can kind of pinpoint where deer and bucks are bedding and feeding and everything. How do you do that down there? Like, where are they bedding at? What are they looking to live in? Like, are they trying to get away from people, or, how does that scenario play out? And is it hard to pattern them?
The first year I didn't get a whole lot of time to really try to pattern them, but this last year I did, and it looks and it's been similar to other places I've been on in Texas. The low areas that have some of the thicker brush, where the little dry creek beds are and stuff. Whenever it does rain and water flows through there, of course, it holds the water the longest.
Yep.
I've seen a lot of deer come up out of those low areas. So I just try to hunt close to the edges of those low areas. That's where I have all my blinds positioned.
Okay, so you're looking for an edge of some sort then, just like you would be in the Midwest or anything. You're always looking for an edge. Yeah,
and believe it or not, where I'm at in Mexico, it is so thick that spotting and stalking is out of the question.
No kidding.
It's too thick to even do that. In fact, I had trouble finding a second. I have two ground blinds with feeders. I had trouble finding a second blind spot because it was just so thick.
Yeah.
And wow. I got an area, and if I didn't have a feeder there, I could shoot 40 yards. But because I have a feeder, it blocks that hole to shoot. So I'm only shooting 20 yards because that's basically all I can see.
Mm-hmm. So when you're sitting there, deer are like right on top of you when they pop out and you finally see them.
Exactly. I have on one blind, one of the main trails, that I had to put the blind in a bush where the wind would be right and everything else. But yet those deer come out probably 5 yards from the blind.
Wow.
I mean, they literally walk right by the blind.
So do they care about the blind like they would here, like in the Midwest? I mean, if you put out a blind and don't really brush it in, or you kind of half-ass brush it in, like they're going to be leery about it. I mean,
Yeah.
down there, is it same thing?
Yeah, you kind of got to brush them in, but my brush is of course long gone now by these
Right.
things. But I think they're used to seeing it there now, and it doesn't bother them.
Okay. That's crazy. That's just a whole different world down there, man.
It is. It's totally different.
So there,
I feel like I'm hunting out west, but hunting whitetails.
that's got to be kind of cool, though.
It is. It is. I've killed a lot of whitetails with the bow, and I'm not saying I'm better than anybody by doing it, but I killed so many, and I killed a good buck with my bow. I had kind of lost interest in actually hunting whitetails, and that was why my drive for going out west was so big. I love going out west. To me, there's nothing that beats it. But this hunting down there has got my interest peaked with whitetails again, just because I'm finding it more of a challenge down there than anywhere else.
So when you're looking for a spot to put, a possible ground blind or a feeder, you said you're looking kind of for an edge, and obviously you're still going to be playing the wind, right? I mean, you are hunting whitetails. You are still trying to look at it from above probably and just figure out, where you think these where these deer are coming from and where they're going to be potentially going. So are you, with the feeder, and this could be a very stupid question, but I mean, you're just trying to draw them to a certain area, obviously with the feeder, but are you trying to put the feeder in an area where you think they're, coming from bed to another food source? I mean, is there any other food sources out there?
That's just it. There's not much food source out there. I mean, just whatever nutrients they're getting out of the brush. So, some people know like mesquite beans are a huge source of protein, but her uncle's ranch is 1.5 miles off the hardtop down a real rough road.
Okay.
And when you get about 1/4 mile off of that hardtop, it's like the mesquite brush just stops.
Really?
Like it's just non-existent there anymore, and it's just nothing but brush. So what they're actually getting to eat as far as nutrients, I don't know. I really don't. And where the first area is when her uncle pointed out to me, because he said he always saw the deer walking through there in the morning whenever because he's a goat farmer, so he has goats everywhere.
Okay.
And so he's like, I'd always see the deer walking through this one area. And I think it's more or less because it was pretty open. That's why he was always seeing them, because there's a greater chance to see them. But it turns out that it is actually a pretty good area, and I just think it's a travel corridor for them and stuff. And what also helps is the property next to it, their fence line just abruptly ends, and there's no connecting fence line right there. So those deer, rather than jumping over a fence, have this corner they can walk around. Well, you put a feeder anywhere near that, I'm sure that's kind of like a funnel point for them, and they're going to hit it.
So you just kind of got to look for a little more out-of-the-box, unique ways, but still kind of relate it to what you might do in the Midwest, like you said, with the fence. And, we've strung up a lot of fence for deer to cross in a certain area by your stand, and they'll use that. So I could see where you'd have to really think outside the box and get unique with it.
Yeah. And like my second location where I was really focusing on that area is I'm right next to that, up there they call it an arroyo, this little creek. But I'm right next to that. But it just seemed like it was a heavily traveled area, and that there seemed to be lots of scrapes and rubs up on the outside edge of this. So that's where I tried to focus on that area, because I knew, that could probably be my best bet. And actually, when setting up my trail camera there for the first time, I was breaking off branches off of a little brush. And that is like another buck thought that was a buck making a scrape in his area. And he came running up looking at me at 40 yards.
Wow.
So
that's crazy. I filmed a couple hunts in Texas. I've been on the east side, the west side, south. I've been to Sonora, in the hills on the west side. And we've went out and rattled, just on the ground with a bow, just rattling deer up. And, man, it is unbelievable the amount of bucks that will come. They'll run you over. Like, you actually have to watch your back, because they will come in full tilt and they don't care. and they're just trying to find that fight. It's unbelievable. So I totally understand what you're saying when those deer are coming out of every crevice, you know.
Oh yeah, and going as far as rattling, I think rattling would work really well here. For some reason, the buck-doe ratio seems to be really good at this place.
Okay.
And which is kind of crazy because usually in a place that hasn't been managed, you get way more does than you do bucks. But this seems to be pretty level, and I'm pretty shocked by it. But in my experience with rattling, I've always had the best success when the buck-doe ratio has been, 2 does to 1 buck.
Yep.
Per se, and something low, nothing, super high.
For sure.
But yeah, I mean, I've thought about rattling down there, but man, rattling and bow hunting, that's hard to do.
It's tough, man. You got to find the right buck,
especially when you're out of a
right mood. Yeah. You got to find that right buck in the right mood, and he might be in the mood today, but tomorrow when you rattle again, he might not be in the right mood.
Exactly.
It's so fidgety. It is crazy. But, what kind of predators are down there for, whitetails and stuff like that? Is there any?
So there's bobcats and there's coyotes down there. I've seen both. I've even seen fox. I've got fox on camera.
Okay.
And being where this is at, like I told you, it's at a base of a mountain, and it looks, like I said, like New Mexico. And my wife's uncle has goats, and you hear nothing but man, man, man. You would think it would scream a smorgasbord for a mountain lion.
Yeah.
And he says there's no pumas around there. That's what he told me. No pumas. And I can't believe it. I just can't believe it. I don't see how there's not any, but he says he never loses any goats to him.
Huh, that's crazy. No, it's not a predator to whitetails or anything like that, but I hate snakes. So what is your snake situation down there? And you're probably pretty used to it because of being in Texas and everything. So what is your snake situation?
Our uncle says there are rattlesnakes there. Of course, I'm not on the place all the time, so I've never seen one down there. However, I was sitting in the blind this year hunting, and I looked down between my legs.
No.
And I see red, black, and yellow.
Oh.
And my first thought was coral snake, but then I looked at it closer, and it was a king snake.
Oh my gosh, dude!
And it just didn't pay me any attention. It just went between my legs and just kept going out the blind.
Not me, man. I would have snake boots up to my waist on. I hate snakes. I hate them.
Well, I wear snake boots whenever it's warm out there for sure.
Yep.
And just for protection. And that's just from me growing up on a farm and everything else and dealing with cottonmouth.
Yep.
And stuff. But, I haven't, not yet, knock on wood, I haven't ran into a rattlesnake.
Oh, man.
Sure they're there.
Not too long ago, I had like a 2-foot gardener snake. I mean, harmless snake. And my wife and I, we live by some woods and everything, and the grass is real high in the ditches and stuff like that. So snakes, we've seen snakes over the last couple of years. Well, it's on our driveway, and it's going into our garage because our garage door was open, and I'm like, nope. I go out there to try to get it out of the garage. I was standing on all my toolboxes trying to get it out of and I'm like, I was a sissy. I will tell you, dude, I don't like snakes at all. But spiders, like, they don't bother me unless they get about as big as my hand. That's when they start bothering me. But snakes, nope, can't do it.
Yeah, I was speaking of spiders. I just went axis hunting out in Junction out west with one of my buddies, and I sat in the blind one evening. And while I was sitting in that blind, that thing was just, there must have been thousands upon thousands of daddy longlegs in there. And those suckers started dropping on me and stuff like that. So I was just brushing them off. I knew they were harmless.
Yep.
But because of mosquitoes, I sat there and turned on that thermocell.
Yep.
And let me tell you, that pushed those darn spiders out of that blind.
Really?
By the time the end of the hunt came, there wasn't a spider one in that blind.
Huh. That's a good tip.
I could not believe it. That pushed. I'd never had that many spiders in a blind before.
For sure. Yeah.
I sent a little video to my wife, and she's like, "Oh hell no."
My wife would have said the same thing. because how I feel about snakes, that's how she feels about spiders. She won't touch them. So, but what do you do?
Yep.
Well, cool, man. I'm gonna wrap this up here. I want to be, conscious of your time and everything, and want to say thank you for coming on and doing this. And
not a problem.
If anybody wants to reach out to you to get like any grips made or anything like that, where can you tell them to go?
I'd just say go to my website. It has my email and my phone number. My email is probably the best way to get in touch with me. I check it several times a day.
Okay.
And everything, and I can answer, and I can also send pictures faster via that way.
Awesome.
Everything. But yeah, hopefully we can do this again when I get my other 2 new products coming out.
For sure.
So,
yeah, I want to do that, and I want to loop back after you kill a giant in Mexico and kind of talk about that hunt as well. So maybe.
I hope so. I'm praying.
Maybe wintertime we'll do another one here.
Yeah, definitely.
So, well, cool, man. I appreciate it again, Rob. Thank you very much for coming on and doing this, and have a good rest of your weekend, man.
All right, brother. Sounds good. Good talking with you.
Yeah, you too.
Cross on your brain.